I went with on birthright, and I went on a few trips with educators that I taught with, and um, my brother went, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you know what? I think I should go. I think it's where we're meant to be as Jews, and my brother went, and I think that kind of gave me the push to go. And so I also moved to Israel a few years later. And like I said, if it wasn't for my grandparents, if it wasn't for my mom taking that step, we would not have been able to move to Israel. Because you do have to have proof of your Judaism.
Can you imagine your grandfather was thinking when he saw it, wow, watching and seeing this happening, you know?
For sure. And then, of course, I met you.
I know, that was like the best part, right? I'll find a picture to share with everyone. I'm sure that's what they really want to see. They're probably like, Eileen, can you stop already and let her continue? But I'll find one of us together there.
Now, I will add that I wasn't coming from a no Hebrew background, even just speaking. We weren't fluent, but my dad would speak with us a little bit in Hebrew. You know, short conversations, basic conversations like "Anachnu holchim lechanut," like we're going to the store, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we were definitely familiar with Hebrew, and I actually had also taken a Hebrew conversation course while I was in high school. So I had a little bit of a grasp of Hebrew and conversation. But when you go to Ulpan, it's even more immersive because you're really in it. You're studying all day, and then you know your teachers are Israeli, so you're also able to speak with them, and then you kind of practice with your fellow classmates. So I did that for the first 6 months, and then after that, I actually started working in a gan, which is I guess what we in America would call a daycare. Worked with young children, and I was introduced to my husband. One of the parents introduced us, and which was actually very interesting because my husband, he actually comes from a more modern Orthodox family. You know, his grandmother, Holocaust survivors, and so obviously he wanted to be with someone Jewish. And I also, I never dated someone who was not Jewish. I always wanted to be with someone who was Jewish. And so it was pretty amazing. When we started dating, we met each other. And we knew pretty early on that we wanted to get married. We wanted to be with each other. And in Israel, the Israeli rabbinate, the Rabbanut, don't accept conservative or reform conversions. They also don't accept many Orthodox conversions. So if we wanted to get married in Israel, we definitely had to navigate how to do that. So actually my boss at the time, when I was working in the gan, she had done a conversion program. And she gave me the name of the rabbi there. His name is Rabbi Yosef Dinkovich. And she said, call him, tell him your story, and he'll help you. So I did. I called him and I said, this is my story. I grew up conservative, but my grandfather, Rabbi Abel Respes, his story, his background, and my dad and and he said, okay, start coming. You can come to some classes. It's usually once or twice a week. And because I was coming from an already Jewish background, he said it should take several months, few months, and then you'll be done. So I think in total it was about 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, because you already had all the knowledge to begin with. And so your Orthodox conversion was probably a little faster than like the average typical Orthodox conversion.
Exactly. So yeah, I think it was 6 to 8 months, and then I got my date to go to the mikveh, which is I forgot to mention it before, but it's the ritual bath that when you go through a conversion, everyone goes through the mikvah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got my date, and you have to, affirm that you accept the commandments, the mitzvot. You go through the mikvah, and it's in front of the three rabbis, the Beit Din, like I mentioned before, rabbinical court.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get your paper, your tu'adah, that certifies that you are Jewish. And I before making the decision to convert, I definitely thought about it a lot. I spoke with my parents,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided that it was very important for me to make this decision, because I knew that I, God willing, wanted to have children, and I just never ever wanted there to be a question about my children's Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that if I do this in Israel, there is no one else that could question it. Israel is like the top of the top of the top. So, I just knew that if I go through this process in Israel, my children, no matter what, there will be no question. And so that was my rationale. That was my reasoning behind it. Because some people would ask, why? You've grown up Jewish. You're Jewish. You're living a Jewish life already. Why? Why do you need to prove it? And that's what I had to think of. It wasn't just me. It's not, it wasn't just me that I had to think of. I had to think of the future. I knew that this was the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through the process. And the interesting thing I do want to note is that my husband, Ari, he also wasn't in the clear. He had to bring his documents. He had to bring his parents' ketubah, which is the wedding contract. He had to bring his proof of his Judaism. So they wanted to know, the rabbis wanted to know that if I was doing this process, that the person that I'm with, that I'm going to marry, they need to be Jewish too. They need to be halachically Jewish, which is Jewish according to Jewish law. I mean, they need to do that, right? Because, they obviously, it's really important. And as Jews, the reason we're here is because continuity. Our kids, we want our children to be Jewish. We want our grandchildren to be Jewish. And so they wanted to make sure.
What I really appreciate, you didn't say to yourself, that's not fair, la la la, and look at this background. You said, all right, you know what? If this is how it works and this is what's got to be done, fine, I'll do it. And you thought about the future. You thought about what was important, and you just understood, okay, this was just a step you're going to take, and that's that. And I'm going to assume, let me ask you actually, rather than assuming, from anyone I've ever met who's done an Orthodox conversion, I mean, they have way beyond more knowledge than I do about Judaism. Is there something that you learned through this conversion process that you did not know beforehand? Is there something that you've been able to take from that?
Wow. So I'll mention something that I don't think is quite talked about in definitely not the conservative or reform movements, which is when you're married, there are certain times, I guess, certain time of the month where you're not supposed to be with your husband.
Mm-hmm.
And and that was something I never realized. And I had met with a Kala teacher, a teacher who kind of prepares you for marriage. And so we learn about, okay, there's a time of the month when a woman is menstruating, where you're not supposed to be with your husband. And I never witnessed that. I mean, I'm sure my grandparents kind of practiced that, but I didn't really, it was never talked about.
It's not taught. We don't learn that I don't know if they learn it now. I know we definitely did not learn it in Hebrew school growing up.